Illinois, the reason, and we talked about this when we did the way too early top 25, we had them just outside our top 10 when we did the way too early top 10. Then all those guys decided to come back. And I don't know, when you get a good veteran core that decides to come back and you have a quarterback, I think the quarterback is key in this situation. But you have a quarterback who's been through this stuff, who's been good already, and you've got a coach who knows what he's doing. All of these things Illinois has. So that they are primed to be the Indiana of this year, except they're not really going to surprise anybody because they were a 10-win team last year.
Well, they also have a very similar schedule to Indiana last year. They do play at Duke September 6th, which could be Duke was a lot better than people gave them credit for.
Yeah, Duke's good.
Then they play at Indiana in the opener of the Big Ten, and then USC at home back to back. But outside of that, like Western Illinois, Western Michigan, Purdue,
I think at
Ohio
Washington
State,
will be very tough.
At Washington's tough. Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin on the road, Northwestern. Like they have a tougher schedule than Indiana did last year, but they also don't have to play Penn State. So like that is the
Oregon. They had to go to Eugene last year,
which is kind of the difference, right? Like did they lose 3 games this past year? But they had to play all those games. So you bring back your whole team and don't have to play Penn State or Oregon. Like your path to 10-2 is pretty. I mean, I think that like when I do mine, I'm going to have to put Illinois at 9.
Yeah,
like there's nowhere like so. Yeah,
let's talk about the number 10 team now because we haven't talked about them yet.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina.
It's your squad, dude. You're a homer. You're a South Carolina homer.
Well, I did grow up a South Carolina fan. That is true. It's not a secret. But Lenore Sellers
went full backstabber mode and went to Florida.
That's right. Then I turned on him and went to somebody else in the division, which doesn't exist anymore.
You're basically Rick Pitino.
Exactly. Now that would be like going to Clemson. Louisville is to Kentucky as Clemson is to South Carolina. But this team,
your coach could be
there you go. Yes, to a team you have to play, but isn't necessarily a rival. Yes.
South Carolina didn't even want you, though. So you couldn't be a backstabber. Okay, sorry, I'm taking this too far.
Yeah. All right, so we got Lenore Sellers. We got Dylan Stewart, 2 of the most exciting young players in the country. Got talent everywhere else. You're feeling pretty good about it. Now, the problem with South Carolina, and people who follow South Carolina will tell you this, is when South Carolina has expectations, they tend to not meet them. So this is one of those years where they have to have a little bit of an anomaly. Now, the couple of the Spurrier teams did meet expectations. So it is possible. But my thinking is we see a better version of Sellers than we saw this past season, which was a pretty good version of Sellers. But I don't know that they quite understood what they had, and now they fully understand what they have.
And so the hope too is that Sellers stays healthy, because one of the games that they ended up losing, he didn't play in the second half, and that was the difference between making the playoff and not. So they basically did that already. Now, they open with Virginia Tech in Atlanta, so that's a pretty tough game. But you know, I'm looking at the schedule here, and you have LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, all back to back, like 4 in a row. Like that's going to be rough. And then the 5th game is A&M in College Station. So, like I think that they are going to be very good. I think that is going to chew them apart. I think it would chew anybody apart. LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, A&M, break Clemson. That's the second half.
Or it's going to put him in the playoff. Because it almost put him in the playoff this past year.
Is that what it was this past year? They weren't all in a row like that. That's insane.
It was pretty similar.
See, because I get that South Carolina's in this spot because you have 2 players who are probably, either in or
they had LSU 10. Earlier last year. But it still was a very difficult
game where
schedule.
He came out, right? The LSU game?
Yeah, where he twisted his ankle at half, right before half.
I mean, Virginia Tech and a neutral site to open the season.
I'm not worried about that one.
Okay, but so Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vandy, Mizzou, Kentucky are the first 5. So they could theoretically be 5-0. Then the second half of their season, outside of Coastal Carolina on November 22nd, are games that they could conceivably lose.
But you can lose 2 of those and wind up in this spot.
Yeah. If you go 3-2 in that stretch, then you pick up enough quality wins in order to bolster your resume, and then you can withstand 2 losses. So I think they have to go 10-2, but they can't drop. I don't think they can drop a game like the Virginia Tech or Mizzou. Or
No.
They've got to be 5-0. You got to
really, you got to dominate that early schedule because you're hanging on for dear life toward the end.
Yeah, and South Carolina, like I said, a player on both sides of the football that you could make a case for being a top 10 player in the country. I think Dylan Stewart is absolutely unbelievably, no doubt about it in there, but Lenore Sellers as well.
So if you look at my bracket,
Thompson too, you love him, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, day 1, true freshman starting left tackle. Who doesn't like that?
Electric.
And he's going to be a year better. So if you look at my bracket though, I have them beating Penn State in the first round. This would make that South Carolina's greatest football season ever, right?
By the way, I don't know if you realized you were doing this, but you intentionally or unintentionally created James Franklin hell in this prediction.
I didn't even think about that, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry, James Franklin. I apologize.
That they lose to Ohio State and then the first round of the playoff. Oh my God.
He would get destroyed if they went into that game, because this would be the equivalent of the SMU game this year. If he went into that game and they lost it.
No. If South Carolina goes 3-2 in that stretch, people will respect them more than they respect them.
Well, and the thing is, if South Carolina will be very battle tested coming into that Penn State game if that's the way it happens. So I'd be scared to death. If South Carolina makes the playoff with this schedule, whoever they wind up having to play, I'd be scared to death of them, because they will have played a murderer's row into the season schedule and they probably won't have gotten through it unscathed, but they will have, the experience of it. And that brings us to our next team.
And this is where you and I are going to differ.
2 faves for just $7. It's got to be Wendy's. You remember the super value menu? You remember the Biggie Bag? I had a lot of Biggie Bags back in the day. This is the next generation of that. Choose any 2 of these 4 items for just $7. Your spicy chicken sandwich, the quarter-pound Dave single, the classic chicken sandwich, or 10-piece nuggs. 16 different combinations, all delicious. You can make a hot poultry power couple with a spicy chicken sandwich and spicy buffalo nuggs. You can go double beef with 2 Dave singles. Create your ultimate duo today in the Wendy's app. 2 faves for $7. It's got to be Wendy's. Terms apply. Yeah, because I don't think you're going to have these guys. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the reason why isn't because I don't think Florida's going to be good. By the way, spoiler alert, Florida's number 11. It's because I think that I would put the second ACC team here based on the way that the committee operated a year ago. That's where we would.
Yeah, and this is one of those where we don't know how everything's going to shake out. And it very well might be that you are absolutely dropping the loser of the ACC championship game in this spot. So we'll see.
Because last year they prioritized it, and the only thing that we can do is go off of the information that we have.
Now Florida, but here's the thing: what if Florida goes 10-2 against the schedule it has? Then they're going to get in the playoff.
Yeah.
Now they might get in seated higher than this, because again, that depends on what happens with everybody else. But if they go 10-2 against the schedule, they will get in the playoff. But they also, if Miami is one of those teams that's in the mix for that other ACC spot, Florida will have might have knocked them off. So you might have a head-to-head between the 2 of them. Or if Miami wins that, then obviously the spot would go to Miami. So you might have the head-to-head where you can actually use that to determine who you give the spot to.
Yeah, right.
So here's the thing. This obviously would save Billy Napier. Florida would come into 2026 with sky-high expectations. In this bracket, I have them going to Notre Dame and losing. But this would be a good year for them. This would be the best year in a long time for Florida. It actually wouldn't be that different, though, than some of the Dan Mullen years. The difference is because of the schedule, because it's this hard down the stretch, I think people would feel like, okay, they are now legitimately a contender if they could get through this.
Yeah. Also, too, I think that the ACC is the easiest thing to sub in here, but you also have to account for maybe the Big 12 having two teams
Second Big 12
at the end of the year, like
yeah.
Kansas State or an ASU or something. You could
yeah.
make a case for.
No, but yeah, there's definitely a possibility.
They go 10-2, they're in over even the losers of that, I think.
And South Carolina at 10-2 is the same situation because of the schedule.
Yeah, totally. So their schedule
number 12
really hard.
seed. I struggle with this. I was like, I don't want to be like everybody else and just put Boise State in, because Boise State didn't have Ashton Genty anymore. I have no idea if Boise State's going to roll through the Mountain West. Like Dan Mullen took over at UNLV. He may tear up the Mountain West in year one. I went with the guy who everybody wanted to hire as their coach if they were going to open, if their job was going to open, and not everybody's job opened that thought about opening. But the guy who everybody at least kicked the tires on this year was John Summerall. So he loses his quarterback, Darian Mensah, to Duke. He goes and gets a quarterback. Ari, this might be one of the funniest things if this works out this way. Do you know who Tulane's potential starting quarterback is this year?
Yes, I do. It's tip of my tongue.
He's played for Louisiana School before, along with a bunch of other ones. Like,
who am I thinking? I
don't know.
Just tell me.
I don't know who you're thinking of. It's TJ Finley.
That's not who I was thinking.
No, TJ Finley, who started his career at LSU, started games for LSU as a true freshman, then went to Auburn, then started for Texas State in GJ Kinney's first season, then started at Western Kentucky, got hurt, and now he's at Tulane. Like,
I thought it was somebody else, and I'm trying to remember who I thought it was in my head.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can't help me with that, but yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe he was in college.
You're
when I was in
asking
college.
me to determine something that was in your head.
Yeah,
there's no shot.
Maybe in 5 years of podcasting together, you'll be able to do it, but not especially not.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
That would be quite the turn of events there, pal.
Yeah, no, I mean, TJ Finley's not the only quarterback that they've taken out of the portal, because they lost a couple, but they've also got Caden Samanza from Ball State. So
yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. It was just wrong.
Donovan Leary, who was at Illinois before that. But the TJ Finley thing would be the funniest thing, because he's on his fifth school. Like he started for two SEC schools, and he started for a Sunbelt school in a Conference USA. Like he's completing the set of conferences, it feels like. Like, how do we get him to an ACC school next? So I got them. You may like somebody else. I have no idea who's coming out of the group of five. Like, I keep thinking the Sunbelt is getting deeper and deeper competition-wise. So could it be one of those schools? But then you think about, okay, who's it going to be? Like Appalachian State has a new coach. Bob Chesney is in year 2 at James Madison. Do they do it? Could somebody from the MAC ever do it? Like, could Jason Candle in Toledo ever do it from the MAC? I feel like the MAC is at a disadvantage that it's going to be the American or the Mountain West and maybe the Sun Belt, but the MAC and Conference USA aren't looked at the same way.
Yeah. Also, too, like, you're not accounting for whoever comes out of nowhere in this scenario. So, but I think you did a really good job, and I think it's reasonable. And I don't know.
I can't wait to see yours.
I think we have some similarities, but I think we have some differences.